It's the final episode of this series of the Football Natter, and Cup Fever has hit us. So strap in, cue the intro! So, Harry, what is in store this week?
Well, we're going to be rounding up those FA Cup semi-finals and talking about the soon-to-come FA Cup final. We're also going to be discussing the first leg of the Champions League quarter-finals. And finally, as always, we have our previews on what's coming up.
That sounds like one hell of a final episode for this series. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Cup Fever, the FA Cup. And what a couple of semi-finals it was. Brighton putting on a heroic display really against Manchester City, only losing out to that Gabriel Jesus goal in the first 10 minutes of the game. And, I mean, I don't even know where to start with the Watford-Wolves game. Wolves 2-0 up, Watford 2-2 in the 94th minute, 3-2 in extra time. Harry, talk us through your thoughts on that game.
Gerard Deulofeu. My God, this man, he changes everything. Whenever he steps on that pitch, he's incredible. And, you know, something interesting is we talked about this the other day. We said at Everton, he didn't really cut it. You know, he was decent, but he never really made it to the heights that we thought. At Barcelona, he was decent again, but wasn't really their standards. And then at Milan, I thought he was a little bit underwhelming. But at Watford, he's been a different man. And yeah, there were some questions over him starting. Should he have started? But I think the impact he made as a substitute was incredible. And it was bang on. And that finish was... Oh, I just can't, but I'm still in complete disbelief over that goal. And the best part is that he meant it. And you can just tell that he did. And that... Oh, it was just so... And it was such an inspired performance by Watford. Troy Deeney, so much passion in that man. He loves that club so much. He was joking about how he wants a new deal at the end. You just know that he is going to get it over the line for Watford. And oh my God, that penalty. He smacked it in. Like, I reckon Troy Deeney is rivaling Luka Milivojevic for the best penalty taker in the Premier League. Like, oh, he's brilliant. And it was great to see Watford get it over the line because Wolves were really good the whole game. They didn't actually stop. They were just done by Deulofeu's skill and by the ruthlessness of Troy Deeney, really. And then obviously looking at the other semi-final, it wasn't great. It was all right, but there were some good performances. Knockout won man of the match because he just didn't stop. He was relentless the whole game. He was tracking back very well. He was putting in those crucial tackles, and they were very unlucky to actually lose that game. I thought maybe could have got something out of it, but City, they were it was cruise control for them. They got through it, and the final is looking very saucy indeed.
Well, I'll come back to that Wolves-Watford game because Wolves, for the most part, I thought kind of the last 10-15 minutes of both the first half and the second half, Watford really got back into it. But I'd say for 70 minutes, 60 minutes of that game, Wolves were incredible. Like, the way that Moutinho kind of linked up, played Dendoncker, I was so impressed with Dendoncker. And that block from Connor Cody, if you've watched the highlights, go check them out on YouTube. If you've watched the highlights, that block from Connor Cody was just incredible. And that's just kind of putting your body on the line. That's the passion that you want to see in the FA Cup. Because we kind of... There's a whole argument around that there's no passion in the FA Cup anymore. But if you looked at the face on Troy Deeney when he smacked in that penalty in the 94th minute, the pressure he must have been on, 85,000 people in the stadium, millions watching at home, kind of all hoping, praying, because, you know, as a neutral, we all want to see that penalty go in. Because what a turnaround from Watford. Because Wolves, 2-0 up in, 70 minutes, 75 minutes? And Raul Jimenez was just incredible. Like, the way he held up the play. Wolves are going to be like so happy that they've signed him permanently because next season, in his second season in the Premier League, he's just going to tear it up. And I just don't see this Wolves team dropping. I think they're only ever going to add to it. And I think you were telling me that Espirito Santo said, we want to go for the Champions League. Next season, we want to build on this. We want to go to the Champions League. They could get Europe this season. and most likely probably will get Europe. If Manchester City win the FA Cup, they probably will get European qualifiers. So to get into Europe, the first season back in the Premier League, is incredible. And we kind of, you could have bet on Wolves doing it. We all bet on Wolves doing this, but we never kind of maybe expected it as much, and expected the way they go about it, because they have been fantastic against big teams. Manchester United. I mean, to get to that semi-final, they had to knock out Liverpool and Manchester United. They had to knock out some big teams, but also get past, the little team. They had to get past Shrewsbury, which, the cup upsets are also always on the card when you play a lower league team in the FA Cup. And they had to have a replay, but they got through it, and so they've had to go through. So they've had quite a tough run. So to say they've had it easy is just ridiculous. They've had a real tough run, but they've approached every game like you should in the FA Cup, like they mean it. And we've been saying this for months now. Why do mid-table Premier League teams who know they're going to get a mid-table finish, why do they not go for an FA Cup? Because you're not going to win anything for finishing 12th. And now Wolves have shown, yes, they're pushing for Europe, but then they know they're not going to get relegated. And if they don't get Europe, oh well, we had a really good go. It's our first season back in the Premier League. But they've said, okay, we'll go for a cup. They've gone for the FA Cup. Unfortunately, because of the pure brilliance of De La Feu, it hasn't worked out for them. But Watford are the same thing as Wolves. They've done really well. They've been pushing for Europe, and they've just focused on a cup win, trying to get, some kind of trophy in the cabinet, because you don't get anything for finishing ninth. Who cares? Yay. You're going to be in the Premier League next season. You get £100 million in TV money. But you want a cup to celebrate with your fans, and the passion from Troy Deeney. He's getting older. He's going to be, 31, 32 next season? So he's getting older. Time is running out for him to really win another cup for Watford. And I think if that was the last trophy he lifted as Watford captain, what a moment for him. What a moment for the fans. But wow, have they got a tough final against Manchester City. And, we'll talk about Manchester City later on when we go on to the Champions League. But against Brighton, I thought City was good. You could obviously see where they were resting players and where they were bringing players in. So De Bruyne started the FA Cup game, didn't start in the Spurs game in the Champions League. So you could kind of see where Guardiola was messing about with the squad a little bit. But it was a professional performance by City. And, Brighton were there for the upset. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. But two fantastic FA Cup semi-finals. And so, where do you think the final's going to go?
Well, Jack, I've done my research, and I had a look at the last game between Man City and Watford, and it was a 3-1 win for Man City. But the key statistics that really hit me were Watford only managed one shot on target, and 2 shots in total, and had less than 30% possession against City. That's maybe a little bit more standard, but struggling to penetrate through that defence, that's what might be the biggest concern for them, is that getting forward they might struggle. But as we've mentioned, the individual brilliance of players such as De La Feu could be really key in breaking the mould. And, I mentioned the term cruise control earlier, and we will talk more about it later with their Champions League campaign, but City just, they need to inject a bit more life into their play, as we're so used to. And is it prime time for Watford? Maybe. I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be very close. But I think City have just such a massive desire to win everything. And so I think they will just get by. I'm going to say 2-1 to Man City in that final.
I mean, if you were going to put a bet on it, you would bet on Manchester City all the way. And it really pains me to say this, but I would love Watford to win so much, because it'd be so nice to see, that kind of club win it, a kind of club which is really, it's not huge, so it's close to the community, and that's big for connection with the fans. You can see Troy Deeney, he's been there since their days in the Championship, and obviously he's been to prison. He's come back, and he's really an inspirational player to many young kids growing up playing football. So it'd be amazing to see a player like that really win the FA Cup and show that you can do it and can make it big in football. So I would love Watford to win, but I just think at the end of the day, the FA Cup finals at the end of May, so the domestic season's over. If Manchester City get to the Champions League final, and we'll talk about that later on, they'll only have one more game after the FA Cup, so they are going to have hopefully, they'll have their fingers crossed, they'll have a fully fit squad. They'll have a strong squad. They'll play the strongest squad they can. So, for me, probably on the day, quality will outshine Watford, and I'm going to go for a 2-0 win for Manchester City in the FA Cup final this year. But staying with City, this time with a focus on the Champions League, what went wrong at Tottenham, Harry?
I don't think a great deal really went wrong, but I just think a lot went right for Tottenham. And of course, the hype around the new stadium has just created such a buzz amongst fans, players, and everyone involved with Tottenham right now. It's just been incredible to watch. Of course, the first game against Crystal Palace, you saw some incredible performances from Son Eriksson, who's had a tough season, but he's starting to show a lot more quality. And then, oh my word, that was unexpected. And I don't think many people thought Tottenham were going to come out victors at that first game, but they really deserved it. Oh, 100% deserved it. And City, again, it was just the lack of firepower from them. They just didn't seem to have the energy that we're so used to. Whereas Tottenham, they're rejuvenated, they're passionate, they're fighting, because a lot of people would have laughed if you'd said Tottenham could get to the Champions League final. But if you really look at it and you think about it and look at what they've had to overcome, it's more than possible. It's more than possible.
But is it possible now without Harry Kane?
It is, because earlier in the season, Tottenham lost Harry Kane to another ankle injury, and this seems to be a recurring thing with him. I'm worried. I'm thinking that this could be a whole career thing that prevents him from breaking Shearer's record. But anyway, when they didn't have Kane, they won, I believe, 5-6 games on the bounce with Son as striker, and I just think that Kane's brilliant and he's one of the best strikers in the world, but they can make do without him now, whereas they couldn't previously. And that energy from Son, which he's showing so much, and the hold-up play from the midfielders around him is just going to be vital in that second leg, and they will be desperate to get through.
Now, as much as Tottenham take a really good advantage to the Etihad, and to be fair to Manchester City, they played it around brilliantly, and they kept possession fantastically well, but they just didn't go anywhere. They didn't use it, and people say they weren't impressed with Aguero, but you can't really blame him because he wasn't necessarily 100% fully fit, but also, where was the service to him? There was no decent service that he liked. There was no quick ball in behind, which he thrives on. There's a reason he's got, over 150, whatever, how many ever Premier League goals, because it's quick balls in behind, because he loves playing off the shoulder of the defender. If you'd played him off the shoulder of Jan Vertonghen in between him and Toby Alderweireld, he would have got a couple more chances, but I think the penalty was the only chance he got. And I think what he's tried to do with the penalty is, I think he's tried to give Lloris the eyes and hope he dives the right way and he just slots it in. But Lloris read it, and it was a good save from Lloris. But Harry, was it even a penalty? This is where the rule was changed in January, where any obvious attempt by a player to make themselves bigger, to block the ball by using their arm, which technically Danny Rose did. Technically his arm came up, but the big argument with it is that is simply a natural movement of the hand. And to not bring your arm up when you slide in, that is forcing your body to do an unnatural movement, which is harder to do in that split second, that instinct. Because with Danny Rose as a defender, his instinct there is to slide in the hope that he shoots low, and his foot blocks the ball. Now, obviously, he didn't get close enough, so the shot went high and it hit his arm. But his arm is in a natural position. But by the terms of the law, because his arm comes up naturally, he is making himself bigger, but not on purpose. And so the referee checks VAR and gives the penalty. But the fact is, I think it was Rio Ferdinand that made the argument, because he was really angry with the penalty. He made the argument that in that VAR booth, they have to have an ex-professional in there to say to the referees, look, yes, it's hit his arm, but that he can't do anything about that. That is natural. You cannot move your arm out the way like that. And we saw it with Kimpembe with the penalty for Manchester United in the last leg against PSG. And maybe that was a bit more obvious. I think I really felt bad for Danny Rose because I don't think that was a penalty. And probably justice was served by Lloris saving it. But the whole argument about VAR, it's got to be used correctly, and it's not being used in the right circumstances now, today. It's a great idea, yes, and it's definitely right that it should be used to look at key things in the immediate build-up to goals, in red cards, in penalty incidents. It's key, and it will massively improve the game going forward. In the hope that it improves it, so you don't need to use it. I would say that's the hope, that players and referees get a better understanding of the game, so they only have to use VAR when there's literally something they physically couldn't see because they weren't turned around. So yes, long term, VAR is going to be huge for the Premier League, and it's really going to boost it. But at the minute, it's not used correctly. It needs a lot of work doing to it, and the referee got it wrong against Tottenham, and if Manchester City had scored it, they might have well gone on and won the game, or at least taken a 1-1 draw to the Etihad with an away goal. Could be huge. But we'll see how they do at the Etihad. I personally think Manchester City will go through on aggregate. I think they'll probably win 2 or 3-0 at the Etihad, and will go through to the semi-finals of the Champions League. But what do you make of the whole VAR farce?
See, it's interesting because with that penalty in particular, that's what I think I'd call a soft penalty, where they could really give it either way. But at the end of the day, my opinion is he's the referee, and if he gives a penalty and it's not outrageously wrong, it was saved, justice was served. I'm not going to make a massive deal about it, I know that you could say if it had gone in, it would be a different story, but VAR coming in, it'll be good. Change is gradual. You just got to wait for it to fall into place. It will be better in the future. Just got to wait. That's all there is to it. People just need to calm down, I think. But thinking about the next, because I don't know. I think it will be close between City and Tottenham. I reckon Tottenham might just scrape it. I think a draw in the next game. But whoever goes through, they have to face a mighty team in the form of either Ajax or Juventus. And this is a game I want to talk about because for me, this was the best quarter-final. The quality in this game was mad. Ronaldo's finish was very good. Great header. But I just want to talk about Ajax because they were dominating large portions of that game. And the quality of players, Frankie de Jong, he is almost a box-to-box midfielder. You've got Ziyech, who just has so much flair. Tadic, he's always got it. David Neres, oh, what a finish that was. I love that. And Delete, he's a great centre-back. You just got to look at that team and think, wow, they could definitely pull it off second. And I think most people would think Ajax would pull it off second leg just as they did at the Bernabeu when they crushed Real Madrid 4-1.
This Ajax team is young, it's hungry, and, it's young, hungry, but whereas the last time we've seen Ajax go out because it's too young, they've got that experience of showing Blind and Tadic, the older heads in the squad, to really have that balance, and it just works. It's so well. De Ligt, Onana in goal, Van de Beek, De Jong is going to be... Barcelona are getting an absolute gem next season. And, it's nice to see that he's given his all at his last few months at the club to try and take them to that Champions League semi-final and Champions League final. And you know what? You are right. They could easily probably go and do it at the Allianz Stadium because Juventus were played off the park. For most part of that game, they were played off the park. They couldn't get close. And Ajax was so unlucky. They probably could have gone in at half-time, 2 or 3-0 up. And to come out in that second half and immediately hit back at 1-1. And I really thought at that point they're gonna make it 2-3-1 for the end of the game. Fortunately, it wasn't to be, and obviously Juventus take the away goal, which could be massive in this kind of close tie. It could be massive going into the second leg, but you can bet your bottom dollar Ajax are going to come out fighting in the next leg. And so I reckon, like you say, Ajax are going to do it. But Liverpool did really well against Porto. 2-0, solid win. Porto were quite poor, but they could well turn it round at home. So we'll see what happens in that leg. But Manchester United, Barcelona, another VAR goal, giving that sure-run goal for Luis Suarez being offside. Like you say, it was a weird game, and it was kind of, nobody was necessarily outstanding. Smalling played quite well and contained kind of that front three quite well, but nobody was kind of outstanding. And Manchester United have lost four. They lost 4 of their last 5 games. I think that the Ole Gunnar Solskjaer honeymoon is well and truly over, and now it's his real test as a manager to Can you do it all over again? Can you do what you did at PSG at the new camp? Barcelona are incredible, and they are going to probably play Manchester United off the park. So it's really going to take them to break, and they're really going to have to be compact when defending and really kind of counter to get any chance of going through. So it's all to play for, or is it?
I think it's definitely all to play for. You've still got that incredible fighting spirit of Man United, and all their players just keep commenting on how they just feel they can't lay down this season. They just have to keep hitting back, and it really doesn't matter who they play. As you saw with PSG, it doesn't matter. They are just always going to come back and bring their best, bring their A game. But one thing that really struck me is there were some individual performances from Man U that were just terrible. So Lukaku was absolutely dire in that game. His hold-up play was terrible. Ashley Young, he was very wasteful in that game. And it will just have to improve, especially when you go into such an intimidating ground, such as the Nou Camp. Messi, obviously, he might want to turn up next time, because obviously he didn't have much of a hand in that game. He was keeping things ticking, but he wasn't providing his usual magic. It will be tough, though. It's not PSG who always seem to bottle it. It's Barcelona who are serial winners. I reckon it will probably end up a draw, so Barcelona to go through. But it will be very close. And then, as you say, the Porto game, pretty dull. Porto were described as a bottom half Premier League team. I think Liverpool will probably see it off, even though I was a bit more assured that Porto would put out a good performance beforehand. So quite disappointing. But one thing's for sure is the semi-finals are going to be very spicy indeed.
Okay, so that is our Champions League roundup, and we move on to the final section of this week, which is, of course, our Premier League previews. Obviously, the game, as we're recording this, is Leicester-Newcastle, and that is 1-0 Newcastle with 55 minutes played. So, do you want to predict the final score? I reckon it's going to be 2-0 Newcastle, and the Brendan Rodgers winning run will come to an end.
I do agree the winning run will come to an end. Newcastle look pretty inspired, and there's been talk on Sky Sports of Newcastle trying to challenge for a bit more, because obviously they bring out massive amounts of fans week after week, and people are saying they should be doing more. I think that comes down to the owner really, but I do think they're going to see it out. I'll say 1-0 to Newcastle.
Okay, Staines is for Harry. So, Saturday, Tottenham Huddersfield. Huddersfield already relegated, but a chance to really upset Tottenham in their fight for the top four. I reckon Tottenham, though, at their new stadium, Huddersfield are not going to have a chance. I think Huddersfield should just forfeit the game at half-time, 5-0 Tottenham.
Yeah, it's a new stadium. That buzzing atmosphere is going to remain. Huddersfield have nothing to fight for except for pride. Tottenham, in full flow, going for that third position, of course, trying to hang on. It's got to be big, hasn't it? I'm going to go 6-0 to Tottenham.
Brighton, Bournemouth, South Coast derby. Brighton, I reckon they're probably about safe. Bournemouth probably need one more win to be safe. So, again, kind of mid-table, nothing really to play for at this stage of the season. I'm going to go for 1-1.
Well, with Cardiff, unfortunately, looking like it's going to be a borderline impossible task to stay up. It looks like both these teams are going to be safe. It's going to be boring, because I don't think these two teams have been very exciting the second half of the season, particularly Bournemouth, who have been a real letdown in my opinion. I'm just going to say 1-1 as well.
Coming on to one of the biggest games of the weekend, Burnley-Cardiff. Because if Burnley win, they are everything but safe. But if Cardiff win, they are right back in that survival race. Because after Burnley play Cardiff, they will go on to face Chelsea away and Manchester City. Now that is near. They're not going to get any points, in my opinion, from that. So if Cardiff string a couple of wins together, watch out, because Burnley could well slip into that relegation place and join Fulham and Huddersfield in the Championship next season. So I reckon, Joe, I'm going to go for it. Neil Warnock, come on, 2-0 Cardiff.
Yeah, Cardiff's been a great story this season, because I think they've been playing really well at some points. Of course, they've had their struggles also. You saw, obviously, with the Tottenham game, where they got demolished. Maybe the quality wasn't high enough, but you're looking at a team with a lot of fight. You're looking at some good players in the likes of Etheridge, Bamba, but Burnley just seem to have been turning up the heat in these last few games, and Burnley are looking like they really want to fight and they really want to climb away from that relegation zone. And actually, I think that they've got a lot of informed players. You look at Dwight McNeil; he's a good player. I actually really rate him. A lot of people have been calling for him to get an England call up, but you've got some great players there. They're going to want to win, and Cardiff, they'll be scrapping too, but I think it's too much of an ass. I'm going to go 3-0 to Burnley.
Neil Warnock to get absolutely stonked in Lancashire. Okay, Fulham, Everton. I mean, nothing really much to say. Fulham down, Everton probably no chance for European place now because of their poor December. So, but I still reckon they'll win. It was a very good win at home against Arsenal. Phil Jagielka with a beautiful finish at the far post. So, I'm going to go with Everton 3, Fulham 0.
Oh, Everton have been in decent form recently, and after that terrible Christmas period, they just seem to be getting back into it again. And, of course, it's a good opportunity to get 3 points on the board, 1 point behind Leicester in 7th place. It's a good turnaround. Of course, there's Wolves in 8th, but they've got a game in hand. And I'm just going to say a good old 4-1 win to Everton, I think.
Well, it's a huge game for Ralph Hasenhüttl at the St Mary's Stadium. He will have his eyes firmly fixed on the Burnley-Cardiff fixture, knowing that if Burnley pull off a win, Southampton could well be safe for another season in the Premier League, and he can breathe a little bit. They've got a big game against Wolves. Wolves are going to want to come out fighting, showing that they're still good enough for a European finish in the Premier League after they head out of the FA Cup, but Southampton are going to be fighting. I can see Southampton winning this one 2-1.
This is arguably a massive game for both teams because the fight for 7th place is vicious and ferocious and fiery, whereas the battle for relegation is so uncertain and dubious. And Ralph is a manager I'm a massive fan of, and you could argue that they've not climbed further away enough from that relegation spot, but they've been playing good football, and that is really what matters. But a result is needed here, and well, you could argue this is good. You could argue otherwise, but Wolves, they're going to be really down from that loss, and I think it's a good opportunity for Southampton. But there's great quality from Wolves. We mentioned the man Raul Jimenez, great striker. So I'm just going to go with 2-2 for this game.
Okay, in the final game of Saturday, Manchester United, West Ham. West Ham nothing to play for. Manchester United are going to want to once again get back in that top 4 place. Can they do it? They'll be obviously looking at other results and hoping that things go their way on Sunday and Monday. But West Ham, I mean, we went and watched the Chelsea game live, Harry. I mean, that Hazard goal against West Ham was just incredible. Absolutely incredible. Nobody got near him. And so it just kind of, all it did was expose not that anybody would stop him, because that run was incredible, but West Ham's defence probably didn't live up to what Pellegrini would want them to be. So I think it's going to be a fault for them again. I reckon Rashford's going to have a field day. Manchester United 4, West Ham 0 for me. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer to finally get the wheels back on his bus.
Well, one interesting game we have on our hands because, yes, we did watch that good old Chelsea-West Ham game, and West Ham defensively looked inept, actually. And really, given how Chelsea weren't firing on all cylinders, they weren't scoring enough, you could argue West Ham could have salvaged that game. Because although, they had a lot of good shots on target, but they didn't convert them. And I think West Ham maybe could have got something. But Man United, they're just fighting on all fronts. Champions League, Premier League, you name it. They just really need this. And I think that they will just have so much desire. I'm going to go 3-1 to Man United.
Okay, let's do a little bit of quick fire. So, Crystal Palace, Manchester City, Liverpool, Chelsea, Watford, Arsenal on the Monday. Now we're going to do quick fire, but because it's such a huge game in particular, let's speak a little bit quickly about Liverpool, Chelsea, because Liverpool need a win, Chelsea need a win, and it's not only for to a top 4 place, but I mean we're all expecting Manchester City to go out and beat Crystal Palace, And with 40 points, Crystal Palace look safe in the Premier League, and that's a remarkable achievement by Roy Hodgson, who many people wrote off as a manager, but I think he's really showed his quality and experience to really keep them up when Zaha in particular has not been in great form all season. But there's lots of players which have stepped up. James Tompkins, Sacco, Guaita in goal in particular, and Wan-Bissaka, the rise of Wan-Bissaka. That has been a fantastic outcome from Crystal Palace this season. But Manchester City are expected to go there and win, leaving the door for Liverpool firmly open for them to, well, keep the pressure on. So, let's go for quick fire. Crystal Palace, Man City, Liverpool, Chelsea, Watford, Arsenal. They are the fixtures. Palace City, I'm going to go 4-0 City. Liverpool, Chelsea. Oh, do you know what? I reckon it's going to be 3-2 Liverpool. And it's going to be late, and it's going to be scrappy. It's going to be like Virgil van Dijk from 4 yards out, but it comes off Kepa and it goes in off Rudiger's leg. And Watford, Arsenal, big game for Watford, big game for Arsenal. Unai Emery, that was a fantastic win for them against Napoli, 2-0 in the Europa League, but we all know how bad their away form is. They're probably going to go and get smacked in Naples, but for me, Watford, Arsenal is going to be 1-1.
Yeah. So I think Crystal Palace are going to put up a huge fight, actually. They beat them last time around, and there are players in that team who are very powerful, very strong, and they're going to try and outmuscle that City midfield. It could be a slip-up. It really could. But I think City will... they'll just get through it. 2-1 City. Liverpool, Chelsea. Now, Chelsea have been pretty interesting because a lot of people are making fun of the fact that they're in the Europa League playing Slavia Praha, but that team is actually really good. That Slavia team is really good, and they've been playing really well in the Czech League, and they've also been knocking out teams such as Sevilla. That's crazy, and that was a great game, by the way. Their second leg, I believe it ended 4-3 to Slavia. So good win for Chelsea, and Watford, Arsenal, of course, both teams in their own separate fights. But I'm gonna say 2-1 City. I'm actually gonna say 2-1 Chelsea. And I'm going to say 2-0 to Watford.
Okay, well there you have it. That last episode for Series 2. We will be back for Series 3, so make sure you tune into that. We hope you've enjoyed this final episode of Series 2. Of course, you can catch the latest 3 episodes on iTunes, SoundCloud and Spotify. Catch all episodes available on the Football Natter YouTube channel. If you've got any questions, queries, topics you want us to discuss that you're desperate to hear our thoughts and opinions on, email thefootballnatter@gmail.com. But for Series 2, it's bye from Harry.
Goodbye.
It's bye from me. Goodbye.